I stood at the church entrance, my hands trembling as I reached for the door. The morning air felt thick, suffocating. Inside, I could hear the organ playing softly, hymns Mom always loved. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I'd driven 3 hours straight, barely stopping, just to say goodbye to the woman who raised me. But before my fingers touched the handle, a hand slammed against the wood from inside. The door swung open and there stood Mark, my older brother, his jaw set hard as stone. His eyes weren't sad or grieving. They were cold, determined. "You're not welcome here," he said, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. People behind him stared. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. This was my mother's funeral and he was blocking me like I was a stranger, like I didn't belong. "Please," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just want to see her one last time." He crossed his arms, filling the entire doorway with his body. Behind him, I could see relatives turning in their pews, craning their necks to watch the drama unfold. Aunt Carol covered her mouth. Uncle Raymond looked away. The shame burned through me like acid. "Family decisions," Mark said flatly, as if rehearsed. "We all agreed you shouldn't be here." I felt my legs weaken. All agreed. Who was we? I saw the pastor inside, a kind older man with silver hair, glancing toward us with apologetic eyes. He started to move forward, but Mark raised a hand, stopping him cold. My chest tightened. People were whispering now louder, their voices blending into a hum of judgment and pity. I wanted to push past him, to scream, but my body wouldn't move. I stepped back defeated, my vision blurring with unshed tears. Through the open door I saw the casket at the front of the church, covered in white lilies, Mom's favorite. She was in there, so close yet impossibly far. Mark's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. "Go home, Daniel," he said. My name sounded like an insult in his mouth. He shut the door in my face before I could respond. The lock clicked. I stood there, alone on the steps, the sound of the organ muffled now, distant. A few friends who'd come to support me approached cautiously. They didn't know what to say. Neither did I. My mother was dead, and I wasn't even allowed to grieve with my own family. I turned and walked toward the parking lot, my legs heavy, my mind racing. Then I saw it, through the small window beside the door, something white on the pulpit. An envelope. My name was written on it. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I waited in my car, parked under a tree at the edge of the lot, watching people file out after the service. They moved slowly, dabbing their eyes, hugging each other. Mark stood at the center of it all, shaking hands, accepting condolences like he was the only child she ever had. My stomach twisted. When the crowd thinned, I saw the pastor step outside, glancing around as if searching for someone. Me. I got out of the car and walked toward him, keeping my distance from Mark's line of sight. The pastor's face softened when he saw me. "Daniel," he said gently, "I'm so sorry about what happened." I nodded, unable to speak. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd seen earlier. "Your mother left this for you," he said. "She made me promise to give it to you personally, no matter what." My hands shook as I took the envelope. It was sealed, my name written in Mom's familiar looping handwriting. Seeing it broke something inside me. I thanked the pastor, my voice barely audible, and walked back to my car before anyone noticed. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the envelope for what felt like hours. Finally, I tore it open. The letter inside was 2 pages long, handwritten, every word in her careful script. "My dearest Daniel," it began. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. She wrote about how much she loved me, how proud she was of the man I'd become. Then her tone shifted. "I know Mark has always struggled with jealousy," she wrote. "He resented the bond we shared, the honesty between us. I tried to bridge that gap, but I failed." My chest ached. She continued, "There are things I need you to know, truths I've kept hidden to protect you, but now you deserve to understand everything." The letter hinted at something bigger, something she couldn't fully explain in those 2 pages. "There's a document," she wrote, "a will I made separately, one Mark doesn't know about. It holds the truth about our family and what rightfully belongs to you." My pulse quickened. A separate will? Why would she hide that? The letter ended with, "Trust the process, Daniel, trust yourself, and know that I loved you more than words could ever say." I folded the letter carefully and sat back, my mind spinning. Mark had blocked me from the funeral, humiliated me in front of everyone, and now I was learning there were secrets, things he clearly didn't want me to find. I thought about confronting him, but something stopped me. I needed to be smart about this. I needed answers first. I pulled out my phone and searched for the lawyer's name I'd seen printed at the bottom of one of the funeral programs. 2 days later, I sat in a small law office across from Mr. Harrison, a sharp-eyed man in his 60s who'd handled Mom's estate. He adjusted his glasses and slid a folder across the desk. "Your mother was very specific about her wishes," he said. "She knew there might be conflict, so she created a secondary will, one filed privately." I opened the folder. Inside were documents detailing properties, savings accounts, and personal items, all designated to me. My breath caught. "Mark doesn't know about this," I asked. Mr. Harrison shook his head. "He believes the primary will, which splits things more evenly, is the only one, but your mother's final legal document supersedes it. However," he paused, his expression serious, "there's a problem. I've been informed that Mark has already begun moving assets, claiming immediate family authority." My stomach dropped. "Can he do that?" "Not legally, but if he acts fast enough before probate closes, it could complicate things significantly." I left the lawyer's office with a knot in my chest. Mark was already covering his tracks. I needed proof, something concrete that would stop him. That evening I received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo, grainy but clear enough. Mark was in Mom's study, papers scattered across the desk, a shredder running beside him. My blood ran cold. Someone was watching him. Someone wanted me to know. I texted back, "Who is this?" The reply came quickly. "A friend, meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. The coffee shop on Maple Street." I stared at the message, unsure whether to trust it, but what choice did I have? Mark was destroying evidence and I needed help. The next afternoon, I walked into the coffee shop, nervous, scanning the room. A woman in her 50s waved me over. I recognized her immediately, Mrs. Patterson, an old family friend who used to visit Mom regularly. Mrs. Patterson slid a folder across the table before I even sat down. "I've known your family for 30 years, she said quietly. "I watched Mark manipulate your mother, watched him twist situations to make himself look better. I stayed silent too long." I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, copies of emails, even recorded phone calls. My hands trembled as I flipped through page after page of evidence showing Mark had been siphoning money from Mom's accounts for years, making unauthorized transfers, forging her signature. "Why didn't you tell her?" I asked, my voice tight. Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears. "I tried. She didn't want to believe it. She loved him. She wanted to protect him, even from himself." I felt sick. My mother had known, at least partially, and she'd suffered in silence. "There's more," Mrs. Patterson said. "She left you clues, Daniel, things only you would understand. She knew you'd figure it out." That night I went through everything Mom had ever given me, letters, old birthday cards, even photos. Then I found it, a birthday card from 3 years ago with a strange note at the bottom. "Remember the place where we hid your treasures? The key is still there." My childhood hiding spot. The old oak tree in her backyard with the hollow trunk. The next morning I drove to her house, my heart racing. Mark's car wasn't there. I moved quickly, circling to the backyard. The tree was still standing, older and more weathered. I reached inside the hollow and felt something cold, a small metal box. Inside was a key and a note. "Safe deposit box 447, First National Bank. The truth is waiting." I clutched the key, my hands shaking. Mom had planned this. She'd known Mark would try to bury everything, so she'd left me a path, a way to fight back. I went to the bank the next day. The safe deposit box was small but heavy. Inside were more documents, photographs of altered records, and a handwritten diary, Mom's diary. I sat in the small privacy room and read. Page after page detailed Mark's lies, his manipulations, how he'd convinced her to change her initial will, how he'd made her feel guilty for loving me equally. "I see it now," one entry read. "Mark needs control. He always has, but Daniel deserves the truth. He deserves what's rightfully his." Tears streamed down my face. She'd known everything. Near the back of the diary was a sealed letter addressed to the family. "To be read at the memorial gathering," it said. My mother had planned one final confrontation, one last chance to set things right. I took the letter, my resolve hardening. Mark thought he'd won, but Mom had left me everything I needed to expose him. A week later, the extended family gathered for a memorial service at Mom's house. Mark had organized it, of course, playing the grieving, responsible son. I arrived quietly, blending into the background. Mark's eyes found mine across the room, his jaw tightening. He hadn't expected me to come. I approached the pastor, the same man from the funeral, and handed him the sealed letter. "My mother wanted this read today," I said. "It's her final wish." The pastor's eyes widened slightly as he recognized her handwriting. He nodded. "I'll make sure it's done." Mark noticed us talking and started moving closer, but I slipped away into the crowd. The room filled with people, relatives, old friends, neighbors. Mark stood at the front, preparing to speak. Then the pastor stepped forward. "Before we begin," he said, his voice carrying over the murmurs, "there's a letter from Helen that she requested be read today." Mark's face went pale. "I don't think that's necessary," he said quickly, forcing a smile. It was her final wish," the pastor interrupted gently but firmly. The room fell silent. You could hear every breath. The pastor unfolded the letter and began reading. "To my beloved family," it started. "I write this knowing some truths must finally be spoken." Mark's hands clenched into fists. The pastor continued, his voice steady. "I have watched my sons grow into different men. Daniel has always been honest, kind, and selfless. Mark, I love you, but your jealousy has poisoned our family." Gasps rippled through the room. People shifted uncomfortably. Mark's face turned red. Over the years, Mark has manipulated situations, altered documents, and taken what wasn't his. The pastor's voice grew softer but more powerful. "I have left evidence of this, and I have made arrangements to ensure Daniel receives what is rightfully his, both materially and emotionally." The room erupted in whispers. Mark stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to speak but couldn't form words. "This is ridiculous," he finally choked out. "She was sick. She didn't know what she was saying." I stepped forward, pulling out the folder Mrs. Patterson had given me along with the diary. "She knew exactly what she was saying," I said calmly, "and I have the proof." I handed the documents to the pastor, who passed them to the closest relatives. Bank statements, forged signatures, recorded conversations, everything. Mark's lawyer, a thin man standing near the back, moved forward quickly, whispering urgently in Mark's ear. But it was too late. The damage was done. Aunt Carol covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Uncle Raymond shook his head in disgust. Even Mark's closest allies looked uncertain now, their faith shaken. Mark's face twisted with rage and panic. "You planned this," he hissed at me. "No," I said, my voice steady. "Mom planned this. I'm just honoring her wishes." The room felt like it was holding its breath. Mark looked around desperately, searching for support, but found none. His carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. "You've always been jealous," Mark spat, his voice rising. "You wanted to be the favorite, and now you're trying to steal everything." I shook my head. "I never wanted to be anyone's favorite. I just wanted to be seen. To be treated like I mattered." My voice cracked slightly, but I steadied it. "Mom saw me. She loved us both, but she knew the truth about what you'd done, and she made sure that truth would come out." The pastor stepped between us, his presence calming. "This is a place of healing," he said gently. "Let's honor Helen's memory by facing this with honesty and grace." Mark's hands trembled. His lawyer whispered something again, and Mark nodded stiffly. The rest of the memorial passed in a blur. People approached me quietly, some apologizing for believing Mark's version of events, others simply squeezing my shoulder in silent support. Mark left early, storming out without a word, his lawyer trailing behind. I stayed, talking with relatives who'd been kept in the dark, sharing stories about Mom, the real her. Not the version Mark had presented. Aunt Carol hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Daniel," she whispered. "We should have asked more questions. We should have listened." I nodded, too emotional to speak. When the house finally emptied, I stood alone in Mom's living room, surrounded by her things, her photos, her memories. The pastor approached me one last time. "Your mother would be proud," he said. "You handled this with grace." I smiled weakly. "I just did what she asked." He patted my shoulder and left. I sat down on the couch, exhausted but relieved. The truth was out. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Mr. Harrison handled everything, ensuring Mom's true will was executed properly. Mark tried to fight it, of course, hearing his own lawyers making claims of undue influence and fraud, but the evidence was overwhelming. The diary entries, the bank records, the testimony from Mrs. Patterson and others, it all painted a clear picture. Eventually, even Mark's lawyers advised him to settle. The estate was divided according to Mom's wishes. I received the house, her personal savings, and several sentimental items she'd specifically wanted me to have. Mark received a smaller portion, enough to be fair but not what he'd expected. He contested it publicly, posting vague accusations on social media about family betrayal and injustice. But the people who mattered, the ones who knew the truth, saw through it. His reputation crumbled. Friends distanced themselves. Even some of his own colleagues questioned his integrity. I didn't gloat. I didn't respond to his posts. I simply moved forward, honoring Mom's legacy the way she'd asked. One evening, about a month after the memorial, I found another letter in Mom's belongings. It had been tucked inside her favorite book, a worn copy of poetry she'd read to me as a child. This letter was different, shorter, more personal. "Daniel," it began, "if you're reading this, it means you found the truth and stood up for yourself. I'm so proud of you." My eyes welled up. "I know this hasn't been easy. I know Mark's actions have hurt you deeply, but please remember he is still your brother. Broken, flawed, but still family. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the anger so it doesn't consume you." I set the letter down, my chest tight. Forgiveness. Could I really forgive Mark after everything he'd done? I didn't know. Not yet. But Mom's words stayed with me, planted like a seed. Maybe someday I'd be able to let go of the anger, but for now I focused on healing. I started making changes. I sold some of Mom's things she'd wanted donated, giving the money to charities she'd supported. I renovated parts of the house, making it feel like a place of new beginnings rather than a shrine to the past. I reconnected with old friends, people I'd lost touch with during the chaos. Slowly, life started to feel lighter. Mark and I didn't speak. He moved to another city, taking a job far away. I heard through relatives that he was struggling, that the fallout had affected him deeply. Part of me felt sad for him, but another part, the part that had been hurt and humiliated, felt a quiet sense of justice. Mom had given me the tools to stand up for myself, to reclaim my dignity. And I'd done it, not with cruelty or revenge, but with truth. That was enough. One Saturday morning, I visited Mom's grave. I brought flowers, white lilies, and sat beside her headstone, talking quietly. "I did it, Mom," I whispered. "I stood up, I honored your wishes." A gentle breeze moved through the trees, and for a moment I felt her presence, warm and comforting. I stayed there for a while, letting the peace wash over me. When I finally stood to leave, I noticed someone standing at a distance. Mark. He looked different, thinner, older somehow. Our eyes met, and for a long moment neither of us moved. Then he nodded just once, a small acknowledgement. I nodded back. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something. Maybe not. But the anger I'd carried for so long felt lighter now, less sharp. I walked back to my car, feeling the sun on my face, and smiled. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But I'd fought for the truth, honored my mother's memory, and reclaimed my place in the family story. That was enough. More than enough. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The cemetery faded into the distance, and with it, the weight of the past. I was finally free.